When you begin to look at things through the lens of this lake, there's a real power there. And the power has always been there because this lake is the lake that changed America, not just once, but time and time again. Welcome to Tahology 101. I was a Colorado kid. I went to school in Massachusetts. I got a fellowship at Stanford to come study for a PhD. I'm driving out, and somebody at Stanford says, why don't you stop on the way and work at Stanford Sierra Camp on Fallen Leaf Lake for a while? I spent so many years at the lake that I couldn't finish my PhD. My family started calling it graduate school instead of graduate school. And so my degree took probably about at least twice as long as it should have, about 10 years. The challenge will be, can I tell you stuff about your own lake that you didn't know either? And let's find out. Of course, the beauty of the lake is astounding. Also, one of the largest and deepest mountain lakes on Earth. 39 trillion gallons of water are beneath that surface. There's more water in Tahoe than in all 10 of the largest man-made reservoirs in the western United States. That Tahoe is this self-enclosed basin, some 60 or more streams flowing into it, one stream flowing out of it. We know the story pretty well of the declining clarity of the lake about 100 to 150 years ago, one of the most ravaged, raped, and desolated landscapes in all the western United States. So the fact that we have this beauty now is not something that happened by accident. It happened because of vision. It is one of the Earth's great treasures, and it's one of the reasons that I wanted to write the book, was to help tell that story, help maintain the amazing blue color. But of course, it's a complex story, because where else in the world do you have high-rise casinos right next to major wilderness areas? Thousands and tens of thousands of people come in the winter, not just in the summer. And that's a major fact in the development of the lake as well. So the fact that we are here now in this building is part of that story as well. As it turns out, American history begins here. Now, there are two, not one, but two human remains, either within or just outside the present watershed of Lake Tahoe that I showed you, including Pyramid Lake, the Truckee River Pyramid Lake, that go back roughly 10,000 years. So the human history of Lake Tahoe, and by the way, this was front page news in the New York Times when it happened, because it completely radically changed what we thought about American history. Actually, Tahoe is one of the richest regions for petroglyphs in the entire United States. One of the major assemblages of early Native American artifacts is right here next to the lake. And if there are anthropologists here in the room or archaeologists, you'll verify, you'll validate this. Go back 6,000 years. I hope you've all seen this photograph. It sort of astounded me when I first saw it. This is the National Geographic photograph of the forests that seem to have existed beneath the surface of the lake. So Sarah Winnemucca here, her tribe was directly in the path of the gold rush onslaught, and their tribe was one of the first in the long series of American Indian wars to be pushed off their tribal lands. She took her story to Washington. She wrote this amazing book. She became a word warrior. So the legacy, the literary legacy of Lake Tahoe, is in part this amazing legacy that we have from Sarah Winnemucca. Tahoe-ology, who was one of several, and actually a bouquet, I guess you could say, of the most famous basket weavers, not just in North America, but on Earth. It turns out that the Washoe tribe, the other tribe most associated and most deeply associated with Lake Tahoe, are among the great weavers on the planet. Here's a woman whose art reaches back through that 10,000 years. These were the original Washoe names rendered into English lettering. And so these names, even the language has roots. Washoe language is considered by many linguists to be perhaps one of the very oldest of all the Native Americans, that the roots of these cultures reach back to the last ice age. The Euro-American history doesn't start until February 1844. As far as we know, that's the first time anybody saw Lake Tahoe as a Euro-American explorer. Fremont looks maybe a little bit too relaxed for this moment, but nevertheless, yes, he was the first person to see Lake Tahoe, as far as we know. Did you know he was the founder of the Republican Party? The first Republican candidate for president of the United States. There was an enormous struggle over whether California would be a slave state or a free state. California came time and again to the brink of being a slave state. It was very clear that the pro-slavery forces were going to win. In fact, the pro-slavery forces didn't make up their mind. They said, oh, well, should we make a state that goes all the way to the present state of Colorado? Should that whole map be a slave state? And then we can carve it up and make more slave states, and then we will control the Senate forever. And the United States of America will forever be slave, not free. Their other plan was, if we make a smaller state, we're going to carve it in half. Just when it looks like there's no hope for California to be a free state, Somehow Fremont and his buddies worked some sort of magic. And everybody wakes up in the morning and it's a done deal. So when they pulled out the map and said, oh my God, we finally got control of the convention and we're going to make California a free state and it's not going to be a huge slave state and it's not going to be two states, it's going to be the state that we know now and we're going to draw the line here. And they drew the line exactly where you would draw the line, but the map was wrong. So they gave away half the lake and all the water. Oops. That line is freedom, right? I mean, that's why you're not living in a slave state. The reason Tahoe is called Tahoe is once again all about the Civil War. Bigler was a pro-Southern Democrat perspective governor of the state of California. So when you named it Lake Bigler, you might as well have called it Slave Lake. So they wanted to name it something else. Okay, why don't we name it some made-up kind of pseudo-Indian word? That's not Bigler. Tahoe-ology in Washoe is the word for the lake that we call Tahoe. And the word Tahoe and the map Tahoe are about our freedom. And again, inspiration is our export. The other part of the 1860s story was made in the 1960s. That Bonanza, which was a fictionalized portrait of Lake Tahoe and the Tahoe region in the 1860s, helped push the envelope of the civil rights era in the 1960s forward. You probably know, I hope you know, the story of the Transcontinental Railroad, the story of the Chinese building the Transcontinental Railroad right up above us here. But what I think you probably may not know is what happened after the railroad was completed in 1869. The Chinese were pushed out, burned out, and terrorized and eliminated from Truckee in a way Truckee wasn't following the rest of the country. Truckee was leading the way. So the primary method for expunging, for essentially ethnically cleansing your town of Chinese immigrants was known nationwide as the Truckee method. So, you know, there's an upside, there's a healing, incredible side to the Tahoe story, and there's some very horrific sides. In the 1880s, 1890s, stripped of timber literally from shoreline to ridgeline, you know, that Tahoe was essentially the first major American fishery to collapse. The largest trout in North America would be gone completely. Tahoe changed Muir's course and his career as profoundly as Yosemite did. When he came to Tahoe, he saw a raped and ravaged landscape, and it makes him angry because he knows what the Sierra looked like before. So he sees the very worst ecological damage in the United States, and it's from that point that he becomes a conservationist. We once again exported inspiration. It's at this point he becomes the conservationist that we know today, as the founder of the Sierra Club, as the man who battled for Yosemite National Park, and there would have been, if Muir had anything to do with it, a Tahoe National Park as well. John Steinbeck writes his first novel here. His first novel is a pirate novel. And in his own opinion, in my opinion, you know, some people like it, but, you know, basically bad idea. A decade or two go by, you've got the Grapes of Wrath, you've got Steinbeck accepting his Nobel Prize. Did you know that another Nobel Prize winner wrote a pivotal book in his career, Bertrand Russell, the great British philosopher, who came to Lake Tahoe at the absolute low point in his career? He couldn't get a job anywhere. He wrote this book called The Meaning of Truth by his own report in his autobiography, stark naked, sitting in a cabin next to Lake Tahoe. And he relaunches his career from here, and he wins a Nobel Prize within 10 years at the age of almost 80. I also deal in the chapter with John Kennedy, who signed largely because of the inspiration provided by Russell and his cohorts, who signed the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty so that we can no longer see flashes of nuclear tests from the ridges above Lake Tahoe, and Kennedy and Frankie here. And I talk about what this did to American culture at this place called the Calneva Monroe. That's, of course, Frank Sinatra, who's the guy in the middle, one of the best-known lobsters on the West Coast, who became the manager of the Calneva. Snyder is a way to talk about where do we go from here. Can we keep exporting inspiration? It's our generation's turn, right? Is that a green lake or a blue lake? The answer is up to us. It really is. Are we going to end, you know, this way with the Angora fire kind of apocalypse now? Or these are intentionally charred pine nuts that the Washoes have used as one of the great food sources on the planet for 6,000, 10,000 years. So we have a choice. And at the founding of the Tahoe Environmental Research Center, the Washoes and our great scientists danced in a sacred circle. Thank you very much.